Okay, welcome to the Politics People. My guest today is a hugely influential figure in US politics. She started out campaigning for the Democrats and is now a very visible and vocal supporter of Donald Trump. My guest today is Juanita Broaddrick. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, thank you, Paul, for having me.
So it's like I don't do major intros on people because, you know, obviously you can just Google and find out all about you. But explain to the listeners, and you're really actually properly famous, so they'll know you more than they know me. But how you went from this position of being literally you were a campaigner for the Democrats,
right? Yeah,
and
back
now
in
are a visible and avowed Trump supporter. How did this
right.
happen?
It's a 40-year-long story. You know what happened to me back in 1978. I was a registered nurse, a new nursing home owner. I had started my own nursing home, and some friends and I decided we wanted to go down and to a volunteer meeting for Bill Clinton. He was Attorney General at the time, and he was running for governor. We'd seen his ads on TV, and we thought, oh my gosh, after all the history we've been through with like Orville Faubus and so many others, you know, we thought maybe this is the guy that can really help Arkansas. So I did that for a matter of time, maybe less than a month. And then I got a call from the campaign headquarters to see if Bill Clinton and his entourage could come by my nursing home and visit one day, you know, on a campaign tour. And we were excited. I mean, we were just thrilled. And so that day came, and the picture you see on the front of my book, I don't have one here with me, is the picture that was taken of Bill Clinton and I that day. After the newspaper took that picture, Bill Clinton comes over to me and starts talking about me and the nursing home and how we're all doing there. And so I took that opportunity to tell him about the problems we were having. You know, the reimbursement rate for nursing homes was so low. And me being a registered nurse, patient care was tantamount to what I wanted to accomplish by being an owner. And I started to explain it to him, Paul, and he just sort of stops me in mid-sentence and he says, I really would like to talk to you about this sometime. He said, are you ever in Little Rock? And I told him, yes, I'd be taking my nurse down there in 3 weeks for a seminar. And he said, well, when you get there, call me, bring me some information. He said, this is important if I become governor. And I was thrilled. You know, I thought, my gosh, I may have the ear of the next governor of the state to help the elderly in long-term care. So that day rolls around, and I don't know how much detail you want in this, but when my nurse and I got to Little Rock on April the 24th, we checked into the Camelot Hotel, and the next morning when we got up, we called his office. He'd given us the number of the campaign office, and I talked with the young lady there, and I said, hi, this is Juanita Hickey. That was my name at the time. And I said, I'm supposed to meet with Bill Clinton today, and we could come over at noon during our lunch hour. And she said, well, you'll have to call him at his apartment. I called, he answered, and he said, oh, Juanita, I'm not going to be there today. And I just sort of got, you know, disappointed. I thought, well, at least I can take the information over to his office and leave it. And then he said, why don't I just come to your hotel now? And I thought that was very kind. You know, I thought, gosh, he'll take time out of his day to come over here. He said, yeah, you're staying at the Camelot, right? And I said, yes. And he said, well, I'll just meet you down in the hotel coffee shop and we'll talk about this. He said, but just stay in your room till I get there. So I turned to Norma and I said, I'm going to meet him in the hotel coffee shop. And you go on to the meeting. And when I get through there, I'll be back to the seminar. I'll come on and join the seminar. So I wait in the room. In a few minutes, the phone rings and it's Bill Clinton. And he said, hi, Juanita, I'm down here in the coffee shop. And he said, it's so crowded and there's even reporters down here. He said, do you think it would be possible to have coffee and talk about this in your room. And I don't care if it's been 40 some odd years, I can remember feeling very uncomfortable with that. And then in the second thing, you think, this is the Attorney General. Surely this is okay. And I knew I had information to give to him. And so I said, okay, I'll order coffee to the room. I did. He comes to the room in a matter of time. I don't remember how long, 20 minutes or so, after the people have brought the coffee to the room, and knocks on the door. And I go to the door, and when I open it, there stands Bill Clinton in these dark sunglasses out in a hallway. And I thought that was strange, but I usher him on into the table. And I begin to pour the coffee, bring my files up. And then he says to me, come here a minute, I want to show you something. So I walk around this large table, had 4 chairs at it, over to his side. And he begins to point at a little building down below. We were up on about the 4th floor. And he begins to point to a little building down on the Arkansas River. And he said, that's an old 1800 jailhouse. And he said, I'd like to restore that if I become governor. I don't know what I said or did. I just started back around the table. And that's when he grabbed me. And that's when things went very bad. I mean, very bad. He grabbed me, tried to kiss me. And that's when I began to scream. I was just in a state of shock. I began to scream, and that's when he pushed me back on the bed. And I really don't like to go into, the particulars of that, Paul. Only thing I can say, it was a very brutal, horrific rape. I'd never known anyone that had been raped. And as a nurse, I'd never cared for anybody that had been raped, taking care of them in the hospital. So this was all unknown to me. Every time I would scream, he would start biting on my upper lip. And that frightened me even more. And then it comes to a point where you just think, I just want this over. I want this man out of my room. And after it was all over with, I get up and sit on the other side of the bed and start gathering the cover and the sheet around myself, my torn clothing. And I'm sitting there crying, not just sobbing, but gutturally crying. And he gets up, starts to straighten himself, put his clothes and stuff back on, what he had taken off. And he gets to the foot of the bed and he looks at me very, very questioningly. He says, don't worry, I'm sterile. I had mumps when I was a boy. And that just went, I thought, why are you telling me that? What sense does that make? And just made me cry that much more. And then he goes further toward the door and he notices that my lip is bleeding. It's swollen, maybe 2 to 3 times the normal size of my lip. And he calmly motions he says, you'd better put some ice on that. And then he goes out the door. And I rush over to the door and lock it because, excuse me, at that moment in time, I was afraid somebody was going to come in after he left. He was the Attorney General and he was running for governor. How could he do this without some kind of backup out there? I mean, this is what crazy things go through your mind. What, I was just frightened. So I rushed over and locked the door and laid back down. And I was just laying there, just in another world, wondering what had happened to me. And I hear a knock on the door about 30 minutes later. I go over to the door and it's frightening. And I look through the peephole and it's Norma, the lady who came with me. I'd never showed up. for the meeting, and she was out looking for me. And I opened the door, and she sees me in the condition that I was in and comes in and grabs me. And then we walk to the foot of the bed and we sit there. And I tell her what happened. And we're both just sitting there in disbelief. And she gets up and goes and gets ice from my mouth and comes back and just says, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I just want to go home." So she helped me change my clothes, packed up everything, and we drove home.
And when was the first time you told that story? When was the first time you shared that?
Well, to her, of course. And then to 5 other people after I got home, because Paul, I was an outgoing person. I was jovial, I was happy. And for the weeks following, I was like this wounded animal. People close to me, I had to tell what had happened to me. And people will say, "Why didn't you tell the police? Why didn't you do a rape kit?" There were no rape kits back in the 70s.
Because this was, as you said at the beginning, this was like 1978, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, yeah. But that's not the main. I mean, they say, "Why didn't you tell the police?" He was the attorney general. He
Sure.
was the police. It's like when those victims of Eric Schneiderman said, who was the attorney general of New York, they commented, "Why didn't they come forward?" They said, "Well, what do you do when your abuser is the highest law enforcement officer in your state?" Well, I happen to be 40 years previous to that.
Mm.
And that's what you do. And also, as attorney general, he regulated nursing homes.
Mm.
I was already struggling. That's why I had taken him the information, and I was already struggling. So, but listen, that's not the main thing. The main thing was I was ashamed.
Mm.
I was embarrassed. I didn't want anybody to know. People didn't know back then who Bill Clinton was and that he was a predator of women. We didn't know that. It had never gotten out, what he was. And I just didn't want anybody to know. I was too ashamed. And I kept thinking, why didn't I know? What did I miss? What did I not do? So it was devastating.
Oh, it sounds devastating. What I can only imagine. I was just like, when did you first go public with that story?
Oh, I didn't.
Because
Yeah.
you held it for a
Yeah.
while, didn't you?
Oh, for a long while. And on Twitter, I have such a huge gathering, huge amount of followers. And people, would say, why didn't you come forward and all of that? And I had gone on my own and become very successful. I'd watch my son graduate from law school. I had opened my second nursing home for severely handicapped and mentally retarded children. And I just couldn't see coming forward. And then in 1991, I was down at another nursing home meeting in Little Rock with the same nurse that was with me when the rape occurred, and her sister, who was also an RN who worked for me. And we're in the meeting, and someone comes to the door and they say, "Juanita Broaddrick is wanted in the hall." And I'm thinking, okay. I get up and go out, and a gentleman standing there, and he points down around the corner to where the elevator is. He said, "You're needed down there." By that time, the nurses had come out and were sort of following me. And I go down around the corner thinking, oh my God, it's probably an emergency from home. And as I round the corner, there stands Bill Clinton with 2 of his Arkansas State policemen. And it's a shock. I hadn't seen the man. I didn't want to think about the man. I wanted nothing to do with him. And here I round that corner, and there stands Bill Clinton. And I start backing up, and he rushes over to me and he says, "Juanita, I'm so sorry for what happened." He said, that's not me anymore. I'm a changed man. I'm a family man, and starts garbling all this crap about who he is. And I just standing there looking at him and I start crying. It was frightening. And I look straight at him and I say, "You go to hell." And I walk off back to the nurses. And they look at me and they said, "What did he want?" I said, "He apologized." And we all just sort of look at each other and they put their arms around me and we just sort of walk away. And then 2 weeks later, he announces he's running for president. So that wasn't an apology. That was an attempt to cover up. That's all that was. And then my life goes on. I get past that. And it frightens me to the point that I think this man can reach out and touch me anytime he wants. He's just proven that to me. So I stay away from everything. Over 1992 till about 1997, I would get an occasional call from a reporter wanting to know about it. And I would just hang up. I didn't want to talk to anybody. Then in 1999, 2 investigators show up at my front door. They had to climb my fence because I lived at home. My home was in the middle of 40 acres, had a huge fence all the way around and a security gate. So I'm sure they climbed over the gate to get up there. They couldn't get in. I go to the door and it's a nice looking couple. So I just go out on the porch to talk to them. Their name was Rick and Beverly Lambert. They are the parents of Miranda Lambert, the country singer.
Oh,
When she
really?
was a little girl, they had an investigative firm and they were hired by the Paula Jones lawsuit, the lawyers there of Jones versus Clinton, to go out and seek women who would become a part of this lawsuit and help them. And I told them very quick, listen, that's a painful thing for me to even talk to you about. So I need for you to go back and tell whoever you work for, I'm not willing to come forward in any way, shape, or manner. And we had about a 20-minute conversation. They were very kind. And then they left. So I thought that was the end of it. Then about a month later, my attorney gets a request through for me to be deposed as Jane Doe number 5 in the Paula Jones versus Bill Clinton lawsuit. And I'm angry. I am totally angry. I call my son, the attorney. He wasn't my attorney, but he worked with my attorney. And he said, Mom, you just have to do what you want. This is your life. And I know that you're happy and everything's going good right now. And I said, well, there's no way I'm going to tell them what happened. For them to call on me, kicking and screaming into their lawsuit is against everything that I want to do. So I went into that deposition as Jane Doe number 5 and said nothing had happened. And Paul, when I left that deposition, I felt victorious. I thought, you're not going to do this to other victims. This is just not right. Well, come to find out, they had recorded my conversation that day on my porch. And that recording was sent to Ken Starr at the height of his impeachment of Bill Clinton. And so the next phone call I get is from my attorney and my son saying, Mom, you're going to be deposed by Ken Starr. And I said, I can't. I won't go. He said, you have to go. And my son said, I'm going to come over to the house and talk to you. So he did. He sat down. I remember we were sitting at the kitchen table and he said, Mom, this is different. Paula Jones was a civil case. This is federal. This is serious. He says, I know you don't want to. I know how painful it is, but it's time. You're going to have to tell the truth. So I did. I went and told them, and it was so hard. I'd never told a group of people like that I didn't know, attorneys and people recording what I'm saying, sit there and cried like a baby and told them what really happened. Then after that, everybody was going to know who Jane Doe number 5 was. And I had been talking with Lisa Myers and telling her no for a year, she had been wanting me to come forward. So I finally agreed to come forward with Lisa Myers on NBC Dateline. That was the first real exposure of my allegations against Bill Clinton. And they taped at my home on January the 20th, 1999, with the assumption that it would be aired on January the 29th, 1999, while the Clinton impeachment was still going on. And that's the only reason that I agreed to do it. I didn't want to do it, but I thought if it can help remove this man from office, yes, I'll do it. Went through all of that interview, and then it got delayed and it got delayed. And I was getting angry. The 29th had come and gone, and they said they were still trying to check out my story. They had everything that they needed. They had the 6 witnesses that I had told within the first week. They had the evidence of me being at the Camelot at that meeting. They had the evidence that Bill Clinton was in Little Rock that day, although he would never answer the request. So it went on. And finally, I'm angry. I get a call from Lisa Myers. And Lisa says, well, I have good news and I have bad news. And I said, okay. She said, the good news is you're credible. I said, what's the bad news? And she said, the bad news is you're too credible. She said, I've been in meetings with all of the NBC executives. And I truly get the feeling that they don't want to be the ones that remove this president from office. So the impeachment comes and goes. It's over with. And then finally, it's aired opposite the Grammys on February the 24th. So that was my coming out.
It's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, because that's all the background that I could find on you. You didn't seek this out at all at every stage. This has been, it's been imposed upon you from the very first, from that very first violent act to the every step since, media wise. It's been you've been victimized again.
Yeah, it's truly the way it's gone for years. After that, the only network that didn't attack me was Fox News. And of course, I started following Fox News. All the others call me a liar, call me one of the women, one of the bimbos, all of that. And it was too hard. So I completely drew back, for most of the, the Clinton presidency and on into 2000. As soon as Dateline aired, I was audited twice by the IRS.
Wow.
Yeah. And they had to go through my nursing home, audit my nursing home to get to me, because I was a subchapter S corporation. So they went through my nursing home to get to me. And that took up a lot of my time. We had auditors at my nursing home for several months. And when it was all over with, I think they owed me. It was just, that's just the way that it was. No one wanted to hear this about Bill Clinton. I remember in Dave Schiffer's book, Sellout, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
Dave Schiffer was, the lead investigator. He was a good friend. And he was a Democrat, Paul, a big Democrat in Chicago. And he recalls when they're first talking about, in his book, about this meeting about wanting to bring the victims of Bill Clinton into the impeachment, but they didn't really want to know that. Henry Hyde was making the remark in the meeting, we have a woman from Arkansas that has very credible allegations, and you all need to read her deposition. with Ken Starr. You need to. And by the way, not one Democrat read it. Republicans did. Democrats who were in Congress at that time, the senators, all refused to read my deposition completely. But this, he was talking about this. He says, we're not going to bring her into the impeachment. He said, we're not going to do that, but you just need to read it. And about that time, Ted Stevens from Alaska stood up and said, Henry, I don't care if he raped her and got up and shot her dead, you're never going to get the votes. And that's how it was. That's how it was.
Your view of, I mean, this meeting that turned into this disgraceful act, this meeting was you civic-minded, politically interested. This is where this starts with you, and you end up at the very least being denigrated by certain aspects of the media, ignored, and then audited twice by the IRS. What's that done to your view of the mechanics of politics, if you like? I mean, this must really take the the guilt off.
Yeah, it just absolutely floored me that the government could be so crooked in so many ways. And that's why I completely stayed away from it. I wanted nothing to do. Paul, I voted for Barack Obama. You know, I thought he's going to be a good person. Gave over $3,000 to his campaign.
Wow.
I wasn't partisan. And then I turn around and vote for George Bush. You know, I voted for him. But I never got back into speaking or talking or being interviewed or anything like that. I was too busy with my business. And people say to me, when I go out and speak and do book signings, they say, how'd you do it? You know, that happened to my daughter. That happened to my mother. How did you do it? All I can tell you is the many nights following the rape that I was desperate for someone to help the nursing home industry. I would wake up with panic attacks and this dark cloud would come over me and I would just get up and go to my nursing home. You know, I couldn't sleep. I had to get out and be active, go to my office, and I'd end up out on the floor talking with residents, you know, seeing how the care was going on my floor, seeing what I could do to be more helpful out there. And when you get involved with other people trying to help them that are in much less fortunate situations than you, that just sort of lifts. You just sort of don't think about your problems. And that also happened with me when I started my second nursing home for severely handicapped and mentally retarded children. That was just a blessing for our area because so many of these children were being cared for in their home situations and their parents were drained. So that was a blessing in itself. But if you concentrate on other people, that was my therapy. That's all I had.
And
a loving family, a very loving family.
But at some point then you have decided to stand up for yourself, to push back, if you like. I mean, as you say, you've written books now. You're very I mean, you've got like 400,000, I think, Twitter followers. Is that right? Hundreds of thousands.
I hit 500,000 this morning.
That was me. I'm sorry. Yeah, I pushed you over the edge. But yeah, so at some point you decided to, instead of being buffeted along by other people's careers, you decided to actually roll your sleeves up and get back involved again. And obviously the climate has changed entirely since 1978. Right. What spurred you to get re-engaged with the political world?
Hillary Clinton. I was watching TV one evening, Paul, and I see her on the news, and I have so much disrespect and dislike for the woman, for what she did to the women that her husband abused. And she's on the TV, And she sang this to a group of at a women's college. She said, all sexual abused women need to come forward and be believed. And she said, this is the gist of it. And we're with you. And I went over to my DVR and I played that back. And I said, she really didn't say that, did she? And the outrage, the public outrage from her making that comment was tremendous. And I'm sure her campaign staff was thinking, what the hell did she do now? You know, that was poor judgment. I didn't know about social media and what to do. So I called my 12-year-old grandson and I asked him, I said, could you please help Nana with Twitter? And he said, sure. So he came over and his mom brought him over and he walked me through it. And I said, well, this is what happens. These red letters come up. He said, well, then you've got too many letters. I mean, what else would we do without our our grandkids showing us how to use social media? And anyway, he showed me. Well, the next day I get up and I think, okay, I'm going to try this. And I type out, I was 35 years old when Bill Clinton, the Arkansas Attorney General, raped me and Hillary tried to silence me. I'm now 73 and it never goes away. And I thought, haven't said anything that I didn't say 20 years ago. It's all true. So I clicked tweet, not having any idea the power of Twitter and that it was worldwide and that it was instant. Within a minute, my phone started ringing off the wall. Within a minute. Wow. And it was reporters from all over, from Great Britain to Australia to America. I mean, and my phone was ringing off the wall. And I stopped answering it, but then I heard a phone call from my son, the attorney, and he was also getting phone calls. And he's saying, and I picked it up quick, and he said, Mom, what did you do? I said, I have no idea. And I didn't realize. And it built from that point on.
And it's been
no. Yeah, people just had no idea who this monster and his wife were.
And has this energized you, if you like, because at every stage you seem to be getting more and more engaged, more vocal, more again, you're such a credible witness because you've actually been through the ringer, if you like, of political machines,
right? And
you've got a unique position, I think, in the history of politics, you know, having actually this is the thing that interests me historically is, as you say, it was like Bill Clinton at the time with your incident with him was just the Attorney General in Arkansas. It was before the whole dynasty of the Clintons had really taken hold. You were there. You were there in the ante room, if you like, of modern political shenanigans and chicanery. But and again, what continues to interest, I'm going to waffle on for a bit, is that now this Twitter account has become such a kind of, you really do use it. It isn't just musing on, you know, your occasional thoughts. It's not just a journal of your innermost secrets. You've become quite proactive and quite active again, very pro-Trump. You speak out a lot on COVID. You actually see yourself as a political activist again.
Yeah, and it's really, you know, it's just developed, you know, within the last few years into something like that. But I feel like I have something to say. You know, I'm worried about our country, Paul. I'm worried about where we're going. I'm worried about what's happened in the last 7 months. I truly am. And I'm worried about what they're doing to our children in the schools. I'm worried about CRT. I'm worried about my grandson going to school with that mask on every day. I just have my own uh, I educate myself from those that are educated about these subjects. And it's just important to me, to be a voice out there.
And you certainly are that. How did you come across Donald Trump? How did that support begin with you?
Well, I was really a Ted Cruz fan in the beginning. And Donald Trump would say things on TV, and I would think, oh, that what's he talking about? And then a week later, it would make sense to me. And I remember him being on Sean Hannity in May of 2016. And they were talking about, do you remember when the New York Times came out with that front page of all the women who had accused President Trump? And then so many of them retracted the next day or the following week. No, I didn't say that. And it just made me very skeptical of the situation. And I mean, he's a boisterous, he's a loudmouth, he says things inappropriate at times, but I couldn't really believe that he had actually raped anyone, and that was before I'd even met him. But in this Sean Hannity interview, Sean is saying, they've come out with this, but what about Bill Clinton? What about exposure? What about sexual assault? What about, and then all of a sudden, Donald Trump says, what about rape? And I could have fallen out of my chair. I mean, I was the only one who had ever come forward saying anything like that. Never talked to him. He had retweeted some of my tweets, but I'd never talked to him before. And it was a word, so many years I used sexual assault. It was when you say rape, it's too descriptive. It hurts. You can't, it's hard to say that word. And there he was. But I thought, my God, that's the word. That's the only word for what happened to me. So I started following him more. And then I heard a tweet by James Woods. I love James Woods.
Oh, he's great, James Woods. Extraordinary man.
And he said, Trump may be vinegar, but Hillary is arsenic. Well, I knew that Hillary was already arsenic, and I knew it was more, I couldn't let the Clintons win than I wanted Trump to win, but it evolved. I really think he did good things for our nation. I really do.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I was Trump from the escalator. That's why I always say from the escalator onwards, I was a Trump supporter. But no, it just fascinates me because you did become quite involved with Trump and the Trump camp and the Trump campaign anyway.
Right.
I did. Significant roles.
It was, and it was very late in the campaign. Even though Donald Trump would retweet me sometimes. I was in Washington, D.C. doing an in-depth interview with Breitbart TV on October the 6th, 7th, and 8th of 2016. It was with Paula Jones and Kathleen Willey and myself. We were doing individual and group interviews about Bill Clinton and what he had done to us. And then I'm on the plane, on the tarmac, waiting for my plane to take off, and my phone's still on. And I get a call from Steve Bannon, and Steve says, Juanita, we'd like to have you at the debate tomorrow night. And I said, gosh, Steve, I'm on my way to Arkansas. And he said, well, think about it. I said, well, I've got a layover in Dallas. I'll call you back then. And I thought about it. I even called my son. And he said, oh, Mom. He said, did you hear that Hollywood Access tape? I said, yes, I did. And I believe him. I believe it was all locker room talk. And he said, well, I don't think you should go. And I said, well, we'll have to agree to disagree, because this is the most public forum for me to attend and hopefully shed more light on Bill Clinton's past. And I'm going to do it. So I did. They made all the arrangements. I only got about 3 hours of sleep. back at the airport and on my way to St. Louis. And it's funny, Paul, they told us, they said, be very inconspicuous, wear a ball cap, wear sunglasses, anything like that. We don't want anyone to know you're there. So I did that. And they said there'd be a man standing there waiting for me in St. Louis at the airport, and he'd be holding up a sign that said Jane Morgan. He said, just go over to him. So I had my ball cap on. I wear ball caps anyway. I play tennis. And I went over to him and I said, hi, I'm Jane Morgan. And he said, sure you are, let's go. And they kept us hidden the whole day because there were reporters around where we were staying in St. Louis. So they kept us supplied in food, anything we needed, they would go and get. And just said, please don't stick your head outside this door because they wanted this to be a very much of a surprise for the whole campaign, you know, that
it was
Bill Clinton. Yeah, it was. It truly was. So we go to the to meet Donald Trump around 6. They usher us out to the cars and we go to meet him. And I was very impressed. He was very soft spoken. And when he came over to talk to me, and he just said, I'm so sorry what you've been through. And I want to thank you for being here. And then he said, are you ready for this? And I really didn't know what he meant. And I just said, yes, sir, I am. I thought he meant going to the debate. Then about that time, after we'd met Donald Trump, Steve Bannon said, let's go through here. And we go through this door, this double door, and we walk into this room. And there's a table with 5 chairs at it. And I remember turning to Kathleen Willey and saying, Kathleen, are we going to eat? We had no idea, Paul.
Is there food at this thing? Wow.
Yeah, that we were going in to be interviewed. None. Now, whether that was by design or whether they were afraid to tell us. But I mean, we were there for Donald Trump. I don't know why they didn't tell us. So we go in.
You don't feel sandbagged at all by that, though, do you?
No, I'd do it all over again.
Yeah.
But I just wished maybe I wouldn't. I don't know if I wished I'd known or not. It all turned out fine. We go in and sit down, and then in a few minutes, Donald Trump comes and sits between all of us, and he says, "Open the doors." Kathleen and I look at each other, and then they open those doors, and here comes about 15 or 20 cameras and reporters. And my God, they get into the room and they're standing there staring at us like a deer in the headlight, and we're looking back at them the same way. I mean, it was
because this was the final debate, wasn't it? The final debate in second debate, was it?
The second debate in St. Louis.
And this is what we're talking about, because it was one of the great scoops. I mean, you didn't think that this was possible anymore in the age of social media. No, it had to be done covertly, as you described, because nothing is kept a secret. And the Democrats thought that they had the final nail in the Trump coffin with that Access Hollywood. What was it called? Access News or something?
Yeah,
Hollywood
Access. Yeah,
Hollywood Access. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, this press conference.
I know it was so strategic, and you just have to credit Steve Bannon for that. You know,
isn't Bannon just a genius though? Was he? He's just a genius.
He thoroughly is. I just adore him. But anyway, we all had our say, and then they start firing questions at Donald Trump, and Donald Trump said, "No, I'm not taking any," and he made them all go out. And then when we get to the debate, we're sort of going in a single line right past Bill Clinton and Chelsea. I mean, we're just coming in, and that look, that photo that you see on TV, on internet all the time, with his eyes all bugged out looking over at us, that was priceless. That was absolutely priceless. It was
that. I don't want to seem flippant, but has this new chapter, really starting with that press conference, has that offered you? This is ridiculous. And like I said, I'm so insensitive and crass, but has it offered some kind of closure for you? Has it offered some kind of bookmarking of that horrific incident?
Yeah, I thought it was a tremendous ploy, if you want to call it something like that. I felt it was a turning point in Donald Trump's campaign.
Oh, it was.
To be able to show the rawness of what Bill Clinton had done. You know,
Absolutely.
I really do. I believe it was a turning point.
Well, I always credit Steve Bannon with that because I wasn't anywhere near the room. I'd like to be near the room next time. But the story as I hear it is that everybody in his campaign was advising him to now quit with the Hollywood Access tape. And it was only Bannon just saying like, nah, 100% chance of winning. And very much going on the front foot to those to that Democrat establishment, going on the front foot instead of being cowed and apologetic and wearing a hair shirt, instead of being trampled by the media, they went on the front foot and went on the attack. And whoever recommended pushing that Hollywood Access tape, I would hope they'd be fired in the Clinton campaign, because they didn't. They underestimated their opponent. They underestimated Trump and Bannon.
Oh yeah, they did. It's just like Hillary Clinton underestimated me when she put out that stupid tweet. And did you know a week after I did my first tweet that she removed "You Should Be Believed" from her website?
I didn't know that. Are you kidding me?
No.
Oh my word, that's fantastic.
Yes.
That is fantastic. Yeah. And the thing is, it's like, that's why I'm interested in you, having been interested in politics in the 70s. Politics doesn't feel like that anymore, does it? I mean, this is, people like you politically anyway seem to be fighting. Like, you voted for Obama, like you said, you voted for Bush, you voted for Obama. You could be an independent or a floating voter, no particular political allegiances. To me, something has happened probably since 9/11, where there's one party now. There probably always was, but now you really feel like there's only one party, and it's kind of us against them is how it feels. And that's why I really admire people like you actually standing up and pushing back and telling their stories to be able to remedy this somehow.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it's really important.
Yeah,
it's really important.
I think the ones that are really going to change our nation back to what it was are the parents. All of these parents that are showing up at these school board meetings and these local government meetings. It has to begin on a local basis. You have to get in there and say, you're not going to do this to our children anymore. We're not going to allow it. To me, the strength of the parents in America is what's guiding us right now.
Absolutely. I coming from, I'm a US citizen, but obviously from the UK, I can't quite believe that America, Margaret Thatcher said that the UK is a country built on a history, and the US is a country built on a philosophy. And it's the philosophy of the US that's being undermined now. It's being totally ignored by the political class. You've got people who traditionally would have been on the left and the right historically are kind of coming together and going like, this is not America. This is not any kind of American values. You've got small public officials saying, children, parents. There was somebody in a school meeting the other day, one of these school board meetings you were referring to, and I saw them saying, the head of the governors was saying, it's not up to the parents to bring up their children anymore, or words to that effect.
No. Yeah, it's just absolutely amazing. And you talk about being from the UK. Back in 98 and 99, I had I used to have very great conversations with Christopher Hitchens. He was a good friend back then. And when he wrote the book, No One Left to Lie To, about Bill Clinton, I don't know if you've read that book.
I haven't.
Between his first and his second edition is when we had so many conversations. And then in his second edition, he wrote a chapter about me, and it was called, Do We Have a Rapist in the White House?
Extraordinary. It's extraordinary. Yeah, like I said, I genuinely admire what you're doing, and where you've come from to do this, and the kind of how you've recontextualized that event into something so dynamic and so positive now. It's they must hate you. That's all. They must
Oh, they
absolutely.
do. You know, I have to block upwards of 100 people a day.
Are you kidding? Seriously? That's
No,
so
it's so
brilliant.
atrocious. And I even had a woman one time go on Facebook when I had first come out, you know, and she said, listen, don't believe this Juanita Broaddrick. She said, I was in prison with her.
No.
Yes, it's ridiculous. Or we're going to see that you're found in an alley soon with your head cut open.
Wow.
You know,
What were you in for? Did she elaborate?
Isn't that hilarious that she thought anybody would believe that?
I
Yeah,
love that.
it's bad. It's bad. Did you see this morning where they had banned the mother of the son that was killed in Kabul? They banned her from
Yeah,
Twitter. When
yeah.
it's awful.
Extraordinary, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
extraordinary. There is something definitely different in the air. I've never seen, I've just never seen anything like it. I've never seen, people are saying black is white now, and it's happening in so many areas that
No.
surely you'd think, I think, what do you reckon on this? I'm going to let you go back to your actual life in a second, but I just wanted to know what you think is going to happen next. Because what on earth is happening now? What happens next? I think there's going to be some kind of civil war at some point. I can't see this is all going to be resolved with just meetings and Twitter.
No, it's not. There's going to have to be, we're gonna have to get organized by state. And then we're going to have to, those organizations are going to have to go national. We're going to have to say no more. You know, I don't know if it will be in 2022, because I know we're going to take back the House and the Senate. I have no
Definitely.
doubt. I mean, there's no doubt. But what do we do before then? Is Biden going to resign? Well, it's going to be just as bad with Kamala, but I still think that he should. I think his time has passed. I don't think it was ever there to begin with.
My problem with Biden resigning, though, you see, the problem with Biden resigning is, I think if he's going to resign or if he gets removed, it's going to be August 2022, say, or maybe May, June. So basically, just giving them 4 or 5 months to be able to regroup and go for the midterms. I think that Biden standing down would mean that actually the Democrats would become a lot more competitive for the those midterms. That's my concern about when he goes.
Well, you're probably right. I just get so angry at him. You know, I just don't want to see his face anymore.
Well, look, it's this whole political class. The problem, see what Trump did. Trump, it was nominally a Republican. He basically started taking the country back for the people, for actual Americans. Biden, Kamala, Hillary, etc. They all represent a political class that is serving corporations and serving, you know, it's globalism, basically, as far as I'm concerned. That's, you know, we've been sold into globalism without ever being asked. Trump had to be disposed of because he was the first person, really, a lot of people have blown the whistle, but he was the first person with any kind of leverage to do something about it. And that's why we're living through what is like a coup at the moment. It's an extraordinary kind of time. I can't find anybody that voted Biden, and I live in Hollywood, you know.
I know. And I'm 78 years old. And I never remember anything like this. My first remembrance of anything political is when I was in grade school wearing an I Like Ike button.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
This is wild.
This is wild. You're wild. You're amazing. I can't thank you enough. What have you got coming up next? Is there any, what should we be looking out for?
I'll be speaking. I just got back from speaking in Grand Rapids for some Republican candidates there. And I'll be speaking at AmpFest in Miami. And then after that, I'll be in Las Vegas speaking at the Forgotten Patriots.
Amazing. Well, and I just don't want to see you going back to prison. That's all. All right.
Thanks, Paul. You're
try
right,
and go
though.
straight. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, Juanita Broaddrick. It's been an absolute delight and pleasure talking to you today. I can't believe you gave me your time. So thank you. And you can have your life back.
Hey, thanks so much. Bye-bye, Paul.
Bye-bye.